Hi David. Long time, I know. Let's fix that. Remember that tree house we used to hang out in back in the day? Let's meet up there. Have a few drinks or something, haha. Write me back if you're down. Your good friend Sean. I could hardly believe the email in front of me. I couldn't believe that Sean Paul had contacted me. We were inseparable back in elementary to junior high. Drifted apart in high school. Hadn't spoken since the first year of college. That was nearly 6 years ago. At the risk of sounding like a dick friend, this was certainly out of the blue. But we were really good friends. And I'd always felt guilty about not keeping in touch. With that in mind, I decided to write him back. It wouldn't hurt to see how he was doing, after all. Hell, maybe we'd be able to rekindle that old friendship. Ever since starting full-time employment, my life's gotten kind of dry, so it might be a nice change of pace. Hi Sean. Crazy hearing from you after all this time. Sure, let's meet up. I'm free this weekend. David. It felt weird signing my name off at the end there. Almost like I was emailing my boss or something. I thought back to our times in the treehouse for the next few days. I couldn't help but smile. Those experiences were the innocence of youth personified. I remember reading manga, watching movies on his iPod Touch, and the one time we snuck up a few of my brother's beers, just to see what they would taste like. Not so innocent, I guess. Sure, I was excited. The weekend finally came, and I drove out to the local forest. When I moved out, I didn't go very far. It was about a 15-minute drive there from my apartment. We'd agreed to meet at 5 p.m., so I arrived at 4:30. On the way there, I began to wonder, what were the chances that our tree house would still be there? I mean, it was over a decade ago since we'd last gone up. Nevertheless, it wasn't a huge issue. I was sure we'd be able to just sit by the river and drink if it had been torn down or something. Still, I was curious. Curious to see what it might look like after all these years. I still remembered exactly where it was. There are just some things you don't forget. By the river, just right of the clearing. It also wasn't a huge forest. My eyes lit up with nostalgia as I saw it. I suppose it looked exactly like how I remembered it. A bit worse for wear, but still intact. I put down my 6-pack of beer at the trunk of the tree. I recalled the makeshift door that we built. At the time, we thought it was some marvel of engineering for kids our age. It was a legitimate, functioning door, similar to one that would lead into an attic. I grinned as I began climbing the wooden slabs that we'd hammered into the tree all those years ago. It was our attempt at creating a ladder, and it honestly worked well enough. I was brimming with excitement as I reached the entrance. With a big smile on my face, I reached up and tried pushing the door open. But nothing happened. I mean, my hand just hit a wall of unmoving wood. I looked up and what I saw confused me to no end. Instead of the actual door that we'd made, one just seemed to be crudely drawn asterisk on with marker. I stood there for a second, wondering what the hell was going on. I mean, was this the wrong tree house? I looked around the forest again. Not a chance. Like I said, there's just some things that you don't forget. I continued inspecting the space where the door should have been. It wasn't as if somebody had taped or glued it shut. It was clean, unbroken wood. I climbed back down and looked at the tree house from the ground. Still the same way I remembered it. A little banged up after all these years, but still unmistakable. Vaguely cube-shaped, brown wood, 2 small windows on either side. But no door. Somehow, there was no door. It bothered me so much that I began searching the surrounding area. Maybe somehow this was the wrong tree house, despite it looking the same and being in the exact same vicinity. I searched for about 25 minutes without finding anything before calling it quits. I walked back to the tree house and looked up at it again. It was a puzzling situation, to say the least. I looked at my phone, seeing that it had become 5 p.m. Sean should have been arriving soon. At least I'd have somebody to share my confusion with. As I waited for him to come, I wondered why somebody would build a tree house that you couldn't enter. Hell, how did they carve out the window in the first place? My eyes began wandering around the forest and eventually back up to the tree house. And then I froze in place. Somebody was staring at me through the window. They seemed to be standing a few feet back, so it was almost like looking at a shadow. I couldn't make out any facial features at all. But one thing was for sure. It sure as hell wasn't a kid. The broad shoulders gave that away. I stared at this mystery person for about a minute before they stepped back and out of view. The hairs on my arms stood up as I began backing up myself. It didn't feel right. It didn't feel right at all. Soon enough, I was in an all-out sprint. I got back to my car and noticed it was still the only one in the lot. I took out my phone and texted Sean, telling him I couldn't make it and for him not to come himself. I waited around 30 minutes for a response before finally driving off. I kept looking back at the forest the whole time, looking for that person asterisk in the tree house. I got home a few hours ago. Sean hasn't responded yet, which worries me. Maybe he got there even before I did. Even stranger, I remember feeling a vague sense of familiarity when that person looked down at me. Almost like I'd seen them before, which was impossible, because I literally have no memories of anybody like that. I didn't even get a good look at their face. Sean texted me later that night. My hands shook as I opened my phone to read it, and I wasn't sure why. I mean, if I was getting a text from him, that meant he was safe, right? This is the message he sent me. Did you see him? Part 2. I must have looked at the message for 20 straight minutes. Did I see him? I sure as hell did. But I decided to play dumb for the time being, just to see how Sean would react. Did I see who? I certainly didn't see you there. In any case, his next message caught me off guard. You know what I'm talking about. I want you to answer me seriously. I waited for a bit before responding. This was getting interesting. But not in a good way. This is how the rest of our conversation went. Me, who is he? Sean. So you did see him. Me. Okay, sure. I did. So who the hell is he? Sean. You still don't remember. That's what I was expecting. Me. Remember what? What the hell's going on? Sean. Are you going to believe what I have to say? Me. Depends on what you're going to say. Sean. Meet me in the forest parking lot tomorrow at 6 p.m. I know that you don't remember, but I'll help you do so. This isn't something we can run away from. That entire conversation had only created more questions than it answered. I mean, what the hell was I not remembering? And why was Sean acting so fucking weird? And most importantly, who the hell was the guy in our tree house? Sean used to be my best friend, sure. But I wasn't just gonna trust him like this. I decided to call June, a mutual friend of ours, in order to dig up some information. Unlike Sean, I actually kept in contact with her. Here's how that conversation went. June, David. What's up? Me. June, do you remember Sean? From junior high. She went silent for a few moments. June. David, what? This better not be some kind of sick joke. Me. Joke? How would it be a joke? Listen, I just want to know if you've talked to him lately. If you know what he's been up to. June. Did you see him? Me. Yeah, I did. And he was acting real fucking weird. June. David, you can't go back. Me. Go back where? I thought June would act as a voice of sanity here, but that clearly wasn't going to happen. The only explanation that made sense to me was that this was all just one elaborate prank that they were both in on. Ridiculous, I know, but so are the circumstances. In the middle of our call, I got another text from Sean. Don't tell anybody about this. Especially June. Please don't get her involved. I was starting to get fed up with this whole mystery bullshit. I was ready to give Sean a piece of my mind. I was going to ask, no demand that he tell me exactly what was going on and what he wanted from me. But something caught my eye before I could send the message. Somebody was standing in my backyard. My heart nearly dropped when I saw it. My porch light was on, but they were standing in the farthest corner, so I could hardly make out any explicit details. It seemed to be a tall man with broad shoulders, but that was about all I could discern. I looked down at my phone and dialed 911, but when I looked back up, the person had disappeared. Or so I thought. I turned my head slightly and realized they were actually standing on my porch. I couldn't stop myself from screaming this time. Now fully illuminated, I could see that this person was wearing a black tracksuit, and one of those white plastic theater masks with a grinning mouth. It was almost too small for his face. The sudden sight of him petrified me to the point where I couldn't move a muscle for the longest time. Eventually, the man lurched forward and smashed his head into my glass door, cracking his mask in the process. And then he did it again. And again. After the fourth time, it shattered. That's when I started running. I could hear his heavy footsteps reverberating through my empty house as I barreled out my front door. I wasn't quite sure where to go, so I just ran into a nearby convenience store before dialing the police. My hands shook as I told them what had happened, and they said that they'd send somebody right over. After calming myself down, I decided to call Sean as well. Obviously, I was still kind of pissed at him, but I needed answers. And I needed them soon. He picked up after the first ring. Sean, can you guess what the fuck just happened to me? What? Some asshole just broke into my house. Was he wearing a mask? What? I mean, yes. How the fuck did you know? Did you call the police? Obviously. No shit. I could hear him sigh over the phone, which pissed me off even more. Look, you want to stop playing this weird fucking game with me. I haven't seen you in forever, and then you come back into my life with this kind of bullshit. He chuckled. They really did us dirty, didn't they? Say one more line of cryptic nonsense and I'll report you to the police myself. You can't go back to your house now. They'll be waiting for you. And don't ask me who they are. I'll tell you in person. You remember that diner we'd go to during our first year of college? It's been open for a few weeks now. Meet me there ASAP. Why there? 'Cause I need beer and coffee. Also, I think they've figured out where I'm living as well. In the meantime, don't trust the cops. He hung up afterwards. I stood there for the longest time, trying not to let the disbelief wash over me. About a minute later, I got another call. This time, it was the police. Mr. My last name. We've taken care of him. For now, we need you come back to your house and answer some questions. Come back. I told them that I'd be on my way, which was really the only response that I could give them. I thought about Sean's warning. If I trusted him and he really had gone psycho over the years, then I was in big trouble. But at the same time, there was something in the police officer's tone that I didn't quite like. Sean sounded more genuine. I suppose he always had been. After another few minutes of consideration, I decided to go to the diner. At least it was a public place. He wouldn't kill me there, right? I left the store and began making my way over. I'd been standing in the chip aisle for a while and the cashier looked about ready to call the cops himself. Since I'd left my car back at the house, I was forced to take public transit, which I really didn't want to do. Now I had the virus to worry about on top of everything else. The bus was empty when I got on, so I decided to close my eyes for a minute. It had been a long day, and I thought I deserved some rest. When I opened them back up a few stops later, 4 more people had gotten on. They were all wearing those theater masks, all of which had varying expressions. And they were staring right at me. Subscribe and please like. Thanks for tuning in and listening.